Welcome, Dr. Sylvia. Uh, I'm so glad that you could make time out for this, even though you're very busy for the last 4 months, despite the situation that the world is facing. But because you are in the business of healing people and helping them come out of their problems medically and emotionally and psychospiritually, you are occupying a very, very important position right now in the world, and therefore even busier than before. Uh, I would like to just introduce you to the people who are going to listen to this. Dr. Sylvia Binder is the founder of the Binder Institute for Personalized Medicine in Germany and the CEO of the Ondermed companies in New York and Germany. Her treatment approach is very dynamic and she uses all her available senses that she addresses the needs of every individual physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Her approach is not an alternative approach as many of us would think, but an integrative and complementary to the available approaches that are available in the world. She's also a faculty member of the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine and is on the advisory boards of the Medical Wellness Association and the Occidental Institute of Research Foundation. Welcome, Sylvia, and thank you so much for your time. Uh, can we ask you some questions?
Pleasure to be with you, Sanjay. Um, it's real important to bring good, positive information to the good people of Mother India, and I'm very happy to be here with you.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. I was, of course, everybody these days is very apprehensive of going out and they are scared of interacting with people. They're mostly sitting at home or moving out in a very, very limited way because they're worried about catching infections. And these have been accentuated with toxicity in the body. You have, in various talks of yours that I've heard, highlighted toxicity at 4 levels: physiological, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Can you explain this a bit more on how do you detect toxicities and the impact on human immunity?
Yes, there are a bunch of questions now in that one question. So I'm going to start with the most important one in my mind, and that is the fear that is in people's minds, and in going out and interacting with their environment. What we know from the immune system is that the immune system only builds continuously and strengthens itself and learns about new virus, bacteria, parasites, fungus, etc., by being involved with other humans and by being in nature, which means what happens is when we are cooped up inside of our houses, not only will fear reduce our ability to have a strong immune system, but it also hinders our immune system from continuously learning. Look at little children when they grow up and they're 1 year, 2 year, 3 years old. We want them to build their immune system, right? And by locking them into their room, that's not going to be very conducive. So the brilliance of the immune system is that we build it by having the child chew on a shoe or being dirt and have dirty hands and put it on in the face. And so the risk, and my colleagues and I internationally from the United States, from Europe, from many places, Africa, Asia, we're all saying the same thing. If you talk to an immunologist, he will confirm that we're doing no good by locking people up, by putting them in quarantine, but we're helping to actually reduce the immunity and rather in strengthening it. So my advice is continue being out there. Wash your hands, of course, regularly, as you should always have done, and then be outside and get your D3. You need to be out. Darker skin, the melanin in the darker skin requires at least 2 hours of sun exposure for the liver to produce the D3, to convert it into D3. It's a very important one, especially in these times when it's filled with fear, anxiety, depression, including lots of suicide. And the suicide rate has been going up worldwide. So I really encourage you to continue going out. I mean, touching other people is important for our emotions, for our feeling, being a human being, living a humane life. So in all of that, you know, when we talk about the masks now, there's so much questionable facts in wearing a mask. And again, my colleagues and I've been talking about this. You know, I'm also interviewed on TV, and the people are so confused because there's so much different information. It's like really going 360 degrees, not 180, it's at 360. So anyone watching, and that's what we're all doing now. You know, a lot of businesses are collapsing, but not those internet businesses, not you know, YouTube and all these channels. Again, you know, we need to use practical, logical thinking. You really think a virus is gonna not penetrate in the little minuscule size that it is, penetrate a mask, no matter how good that mask is, unless you have an oxygen mask and you're all infiltrated, you know, you're within the whole suit. But come on, the brilliance of a virus is that it can get to you anyway, through the skin, and especially when you have moist paper or cloth masks on your face, the problem is they're still going to come through. The other problem is you continue to inhale CO2, and you're not getting the oxygen that your body needs in order to improve immunity. So all of that, you know, when physicians wear masks, they're not wearing it to protect themselves. They're wearing it to protect the patient when they perform a surgical procedure. So if we take all of that into consideration, you know, I want you to start reducing fear. And start appreciating that, yes, that the whole world has come together in a pandemic kind of a way, and whatever the background is of that pain or pandemic, that's not the issue here. The issue is for us to continue living normal lives. And the more fear you will have, the more stress there will be in your body, and stress hormones will be released, and therefore reducing the ability of your immune system to fight against bacteria, virus, etc. So the approach that I take, and yes, you have heard me lecture at A4M in Vegas, where we met you and Alok, wonderful Alok. The both of you came into my life many years ago. And detoxification, you know, is one of the most important things that we need to start out with our patients, no matter what it is that we do with them, no matter what they're suffering from in a chronically ill setting. If it's acute, it's a different story. But chronically ill patients, we need to address them spiritually, and that doesn't mean that I believe in having to have a faith in a particular religion, not at all. You know, my belief is that we're spiritual beings in these temples of biology, and we must not forget that, you know, if we're off spiritually, if we're not in alignment with all there is, and whatever you want to call that, and I'm going to call it, you know, the universal love, then how am I going to love myself? How am I going to be in alignment with myself? And how am I going to be the best version of myself? Whether that is immunity, whether that is creativity. Yes. So spiritual is very important. And so we have approaches, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But also, of course, the emotions are very important, because emotions trigger us to depart from a physiological stable place. When there's unresolved emotional shock or trauma, then we cannot be the best version again of ourselves, and we're not performing at optimal health, at optimal well-being. So we need to address the emotions. I mean, I always say they're the trigger. I mean, it all starts with the spirituality, the being funneled through the emotions and the mental processes that then are lived through the stage of biology. So those three have priority before we even address the body, and they can all be done at the same time. Mental processes need to be streamlined. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole of problems and stories only to feed an ego, my ego, somebody else's ego, only to fear into a fear. That doesn't get us anywhere. So staying as mindful, as positive, and opposite of fear is love. So as loving as we possibly can be. And I use, for that, of course, I use my intuition. I had the fortune of being clinically dead 5 times at the age of 15. So when I came back, I realized, a few years later, I realized a different state. You know, I was actually, some people take drugs to have the experience I had naturally. And it was almost like spirit awoke in me, and I had my near-to-death experiences with the light and the beautiful sounds and being one with all there is. So people, don't be afraid of dying. It's a beautiful experience. The process of dying might be painful, but not death itself. That is an illusion. That is just another fear factor. So it is so heartwarming for me to share this experience, because, you know, the biggest fears of people's lives is a death, and ultimately, you know, we're all coming to live and die. That is just the evolution, and we should celebrate it. And the yogis knew all about that. You know, I'm a big fan, much into the yogi theories and the philosophies. And so intuition is an important one, and so it pulls you away from thinking, and it allows a bigger wisdom to be downloaded and uploaded. So that's one way. And then we, of course, I'm using the on-demand technology, and I have it right here next to me, because it's sort of, some people have said, oh, it's like spirit talking through it. Well, it's not esoteric. This is not an alternative. This is an addition to everything else that we're doing. I cannot give you vitamin C through the on-demand. I can't give a massage or rehabilitate, what is the word? Rehabilitate, no, I don't know. To give you physical therapy to help you gain a strength over your bones and ligaments and tendons again. But it can help you from the inside out. So it is a plug-in. It is one of the most important plugins, because when you look at our understanding, at humanity's understanding of life and the multiverses, we always, you know, in medicine, we always talk about biology and chemistry. But you know, this is just at the end of a linear line, when it really starts, you know, in interpreting the world in terms of mathematics, right? We're interpreting physics as mathematical equations in order to arrive at understanding of what physics is doing. So these two are further backwards. We still need them, obviously, but we should really start at the beginning, the basics, and that's physics. Physics precedes chemistry. So it is important that we acknowledge, honor, and give stimulation in a healing way with the electromagnetic field, because as Tesla and Einstein said in the beginning of the last century, and that was over 100 years ago, you know, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of frequency, vibration, and energy, because that's where it's at. We can't see it, but it doesn't mean that it's not there.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
It is important to address and find dysfunctions in the body that are not working as well as they could.
Yes, you have actually in your lectures spoken a lot about focused EMF, which you just mentioned. And to flush areas such as inflammation pockets, thereby attracting an immune response to a previously sheltered area. And how do you explain that?
Yeah, that's easy. It's not our work, but that work was done by many people, including Dr. Stelier. He also grew up in Vienna, Austria, like myself, and then he moved to Canada. And he was an endocrinologist who found out that stress causes inflammation. Now that is a well-known theory
Yes.
by now, but he did that in the 50s, and he didn't have all the instruments that we have today. And so he said, look, inflammation is always present in the body. And even if we have blood markers elevated that indicate inflammation, we don't know where the inflammation is sitting. And even if we knew, we couldn't target inflammation with treatment. So he talked about the ciliary pouches, meaning even an old injury that could be 30 years old, or a recent injury, or anything that you had an infection, or there was an emotional stress factor that caused you to have inflammation, and it becomes a barricaded area in the body. It's like a body within the body. The immune cells cannot see that there is inflammation that breeds toxicity, that breeds waste products, and maybe even holds heavy metals. It holds parasites and viruses and bacteria and fungus. It's like a community by itself. And the problem is, the brilliance is that it's sheltered. The body shelters it. But the problem is that it leaks toxicity throughout the whole body. So you may have an old injury in the left shoulder, and then 30 years later, you have a pain and movability problems with your right knee. So treating the right knee might do a little bit, but it's not going to get to the root problem, because the root problem may be that left shoulder where the hidden inflammation is sitting and the toxicity is just going downstream. And then, of course, those upstream with energy and fluids that are toxic.
Yeah.
So we need to find those pockets of inflammation. And when other people were talking about this in the 50s. And so you with the hand applicator is so easy. We give it just a 2-minute sweep scan of the body while palpating the radial pulse, and it would reveal it is not the Ondomet. The Ondomet only sends focused, targeted pulse electromagnetic fields in a non-invasive way, no side effects. Even people with implants and pacemakers can use it. But we're tapping into the unknown by using the autonomic nervous system. The yogis knew all that already. And
yeah.
Even, we borrowed on, and this is not traditional Chinese medicine. This is not the complicated pulse feeling, not at all. It's a very simple, it's almost like taking a stethoscope and listening to the quality of the lungs, listening to the quality of the heart. We can't automate it because it's quality we're listening for. The same here. Our thumb or our fingers are listening to the quality. When it changes, that is a reaction from the autonomic nervous system, telling the practitioner there's a dysfunction, or telling the practitioner, oh, these frequencies, these programs are most ideal for helping my patients overcome their inflammatory underlying issues, their infectious processes, and even a sclerosed tissue, scars can be isolated, found, and treated.
See, we've read a lot about quantum physics discovery that atoms are made up of energy, and that's constantly spinning and vibrating, thereby making our own, in a way, energy signature. I read in your book that Ondomet actually helps to detect this frequency signature and then also correct it. How do you do that? Do you explain that, please?
Yes, I want to answer this. When let's say liver gallbladder comes up as a frequencies, there's 2 channels, and these 2 frequencies, as a frequency matrix that is based on mathematics again, and based on sound, on the tempered piano, 12 tones, and they're activated. So this is all scientific, this is not just picking out of a hat a number, no. And so Rolf, the inventor, was a brilliant and very genuine, beautiful man, which brought this to humanity, this innovation. And he matched the Eastern and the Western medical philosophies. And so by doing so, we're able to identify, let's say, the liver gallbladder as being the frequencies. That doesn't mean that the liver gallbladder need to be treated. You know, that is again, it's a boxed in a reductionist method. No, we now have the treatment, right? We have, let's say, the remedy in terms of focused electromagnetic fields. And now the next question is, well, where do we need to place the remedy? So we can target the treatment in the areas that the body needs the stimulation the most. So that's then, it could be on a gallbladder meridian. You know, if I find something, I find a reaction above my right ear. Yeah, that might be the skull, it might be the nerves, it might be the ear, etc., etc. But it might also be that this is the gallbladder meridian, which is above the ears on both sides. So we're combining, you don't have to know about traditional Chinese medicine. I'm just giving you the idea of how you can actually zoom out and get a much bigger and better perspective of your patient's health journey that started with their birth until today. So the frequencies that we're using help to stimulate microcirculation, which ultimately ends up in macrocirculation. So it doesn't mean that we give the body something that it is missing. Let's look at it from a different way. We all have cell phones. If our cell phone is out of connection with the Wi-Fi, and the Wi-Fi is not right here, the Wi-Fi is somewhere in space, right? So that gives us the idea that, wow, in order to communicate, molecules don't have to touch. They
Yes.
don't. And so the same in the body. Well, we have certain, of course, biological processes, like the lock and key process with hormones. Well, that's the biology. As I said, that is further down the line. But more brilliantly, you know, in energetic terms, everything spins and vibrates. And Dr. Bruce Lipton, in his book, The Biology of Belief, he explains this very beautifully. Dr. James Oschman explains this very beautiful in his book, Energy Medicine, The Scientific Basis. So everything is vibrating, and if it stops vibrating, you know, if things would not move, you couldn't see them. We need movement and vibration. So the way that the nervous system communicates and an organ-to-organ communication happens is not by shaking hands and touching, but it is by electromagnetic communication pathways. The on-limit taps into the electromagnetic communication pathways and restores a broken communication, and so gives it the communication, the Wi-Fi it needs to restore itself and continue healthy communication. That's one way. The second thing is, of course, where we point the applicators, and we have various ones where we point the applicator. In this case here, pointed to the pituitary region. This is where microcirculation happens all the way through the head, because you cannot stop pulse electromagnetic fields unless there's a metal inside. Then you have movement happening, and that movement attracts immune cells because there is a chaotic environment suddenly happening. It attracts blood flow into an otherwise malnourished area. Now, of course, people will say, oh no, if we have cancer cells, we don't want to have more blood there. Well, the body is brilliant and will not send more blood when it's not needed. The on-limit doesn't override the biology. The on-limit aids the biology, but doesn't override the intelligence. So this is what's important is like Bruce Lipton says, every unique individual carries unique energy signatures. All the time that changes with every thought, every vibration, every feeling, in every moment that changes, a liver, a heart, it doesn't resonate on one particular frequency. That's nonsense. So it is a whole symphony of continuously singing with one another. And again, the yogis knew all that already. We have the beautiful solfeggio frequencies, right? They are beautiful, but they're not the only ones that correlate with love and DNA and etc. Every individual will need what they need at that time. So personalization is very, very important. But Bruce Lipton says that you know, everything at the end, the hormones, the neurotransmitters, all of that chemical process, it ultimately ends up being an act of electromagnetics.
In fact, James Oshman even said that, you know, if we ignore energy, we miss 99% of the reality. So, you know, I've read that, and also in one of your lectures in Bangkok, which you gave at the A4M, you talked about frequency specificity, which is the key, and that molecules do not really have to touch each other or interact with each other. What I'm asking is that uh, in what you just explained to us so beautifully about each person having his own frequency signature. So people like you and people who are other healers who have a higher frequency level, they can impact and influence the lower frequencies of people who are weak immune systems. And therefore, OnDamed plus the healer plus the healed or the patient, all three are in a way interacting with each other. It's not just the machine that's doing its job. It's also the healer, which is through his intuitive powers, judging the frequencies of the person that is being healed and tuning the OnDamed according to the frequencies of the person that needs the healing. Is that correct way of explaining it?
Well, that's one way of looking at it. Yes.
I'm just trying
Well
to
done.
make it simple.
Well, it's one way of looking at it, of course. Person to person look. When a person comes in, I look at them. They look at me. I touch them. That already the healing is starting, or not. You know that happens too. and you know the person needs to be ready to be wanna be healed. That's you know, of course.
The channels have to be open to receive.
That's right. But even I tell you what, the machine does a lot even on its own. But the machine, of course, it needs an operator. But we have people that buy ornaments for their home use. I mean, 40% of our people are using ornament in the United States of America. They are at home. They're patients. And they use this and they feel themselves, so there's nobody else there. So don't underestimate, and I know you don't, but I'm saying nobody should underestimate the power of using pulsed electromagnetic fields. And yes, you can lay on a mat, but that's very limited. It's like you listen to the same music over and over again. It's going through the whole body. We're not isolated. We're not finding. We're not diagnosing. We're not getting any information. And patients want to, of course, learn, you know, and be reminded of certain deposits of memory that is not healthy for them.
Yes.
I want to tell you that also, I mean, this is we cannot be, when we talk about energy, we can't be on a 3D level. We got to move ourselves on a 4 to 6 dimensional level, whatever that is really. But I'm just going to say it. You know, the language needs to be formed, the imagination needs to be there for us to understand, or to not even understand, but to realize that we don't know what we don't know. And when we use pulsed electromagnetic fields, pulsed is very important because it sort of honors the feedback from the biology. You're not overriding by constantly bombarding the body, the biology, with one frequency, 2 frequencies. It is also important to select only 2 frequencies, no more than 2. It's because you don't want to introduce different messages to the body, because what is the body going to do?
Right.
It's confusing. So those things are important. But I also want to remind you that in module 3, especially during these times, not only do we boost the immunity, and what is also, besides detoxification, a very, very essential part of helping our patients boost immunity is to balance sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. Because if you don't do that, you're like dealing with a wall. You can get an immediate effect, but it's going to spring right back. So we have, that is one of the 2 most important issues. And number 3 is then building the immunity, getting blood flow the way it's needed. And also, as I was saying, then interrupted myself to widen the explanation, is that in module 3, we're using only one frequency, and they are microbial related. I've been treating COVID-19 patients.
Oh.
I've been treating them personally, and I have many colleagues around the globe that are treating these patients. And whether it's a COVID-19 or whether it's influenza, at the end of the day, it's very similar. Okay, the symptoms are very similar. Yes, we have here with COVID-19 a little different, but then again, everybody's different. Every virus outbreak is different. So what the focused electromagnetic fields also do, and this has been proven even in the beginning of the 20th century, and there's a lot of studies and I lecture on this with because we have to find different ways with the what is it called? What is it called? What is it called? I can't think of it now. An antibiotic. You see, it's not even in the forefront. It's not what I would take at all, ever. So the antibiotics resistance worldwide has caused a lot of issues. So universities from around the world are looking at other methods, and pulse electromagnetic fields is one of them. And we have seen that under a microscope, if you put a bacteria and you tune into that bacteria, and then we did a study on gastrointestinal epithelial cells of what can happen when you bombard a cell that has been infected, LPS infected, or if you take a bacteria, it moves around very nicely, and then as you introduce the frequency, one particular frequency, it starts to maybe have horns, tails, that's called a pleomorphism. And then at some point, within a few minutes, the bacterial movement will slow down. And within 5 minutes, the bacteria is dead. So we can have a direct influence, not only by killing a bacteria or virus, but more importantly, by changing the environment in which the virus, bacteria, parasite, fungus is living in. In Germany, we have a saying, if the fish gets sick, don't treat the fish, but treat the water in which it swims. Yes. I tell you what, there is an acute issue, there's a chronic issue. So we need to marry those two, because we do have toxins and poisons that would kill us if we would not kill that poison, if we would not interact in the same way. So a pronged approach of changing the milieu, changing the bioterrain, while hindering the continuation of the life of a bacteria and virus, is very brilliant, and you can do that with the OncoMed.
Fantastic. Because I was also reading about the abilities of OncoMed to detect these energy dysfunctions. People have been using things like Kirlian photography and dark field microscopy and thermography, etc., to diagnose energy dysfunction. But OncoMed has the abilities of all of these combined. As you said in one of your slides in Las Vegas, about it being a continuum between Ayurveda, TCM, bioenergetic fields, nutrition, intuition, homeopathy, epigenetics. It combines everything, and then that's how OncoMed is drawing upon from all these sources.
That's great. Yes, well done. Thank you for listening so well to my lectures. I appreciate it. Yes, I call it my planetary system. And while OncoMed you can use OncoMed without having any knowledge of that. It just pulls it all together. But when you have knowledge of it, you're a physician, you need to educate your patients. You don't need to, but it would speed up the healing process, because education is very essential, I believe. And the more my patient knows, the more they can, of course, own their own health recovery. And that's what I want for them. I don't own it, they own it. So all of these elements, all of them touch on the energetics. I mean, even if you look at allopathic, which is not part of my planetary system, because it's not what I use, but I send them out to people that do. I don't need to do what they're doing. We complement each other, right? So if you look at the allopathic approach, they use energy medicine every day. You cannot imagine a physician's office, or in the case of an MRI or CAT scan, a hospital that doesn't have one of these devices, or EEG and EKG. That's measuring the energy. So we're all using energy medicine. We may not
Yes, but the allopathic drugs, which are antibiotics and other things like that, they are actually severely altering the energy field as well. They damage the cell energy, isn't it? In a very bad way. I think I've lost you. Yeah, I think I
We're
lost
back.
you between, yeah, for a moment. So I was just saying that since you're talking about allopathy using energy all the time, I also feel that the medicines that the allopathic drugs prescribe or they give are severely altering the energy of the cell biology itself. They alter the cell biology through energy disturbances, isn't it?
So true. You're absolutely right. Because it changes also the milieu. It changes. It makes you more and often more acidic. It changes. It adds toxicity to your body, making your liver not as effective, which has an impact on all the other organs, in particular also on the kidneys. So you're not detoxifying it properly.
Yes.
And then again, it's not resolving an issue. It is further causing harm to your biology, and especially in the case of antibiotics, often we don't even know what we're dealing with, and we give antibiotics because somebody has malaria, which makes no sense. Malaria is coming from toxoplasmosis, and so that's a parasite. So it makes really no logical sense to bombard the body with chemical drugs. And I do want to mention, because I have not, the bio that you read in the beginning is an outdated bio, and there's no problem with that. But I am also part now of a very exciting movement of Canada Health 2030. I am a board member of a brilliant company, Salmonetics, led by Tesla. And we are finding ways, and Canada is spearheading this, to not have, and even pharmaceutical companies, they are steering it. Can you imagine? It's a hallelujah. It's very exciting because they know that they have outlived their days of only relying on chemistry. There are needed ways, and when we do lean on medication, of course, we're not saying no or being too crazy, and I can't find a better word, and going overboard and saying we never need it. It's not true. But we need to elevate it. Let's start at non-invasive. And if that doesn't work, let's then elevate it. And if that doesn't work, we elevate it. So if you look at, for example, diabetic foot, all we have is wound healing and then taking off the toes, and so that is not a happy ending. And so if we use pulse electromagnetic fields on that foot, we would never have to amputate in the first place, because we're improving circulation. So even pharmaceutical companies, big companies, they are realizing that we need to change the way that we consider a well-being model in a sustainable social bond, meaningful way. We are not only helping one individual, but we're helping a community. And every country is made out of many communities, and you can look at our own bodies, right? It's a community, and we need to be in sync. with each of the communities in order to be as powerful and creative and well as we can be.
Well, thank you for explaining that so beautifully. Uh, I'm sorry I've taken a lot of time. As one last question, I just want to know about the body's self-regulating mechanism, which is there to build the immune system. How does OnDemand help in building balance in the immune system, which is so critical at this point of time?
Yes, so number one, as I mentioned before, I'm just going to say it again, it cannot be said enough, is that when our nervous systems are out of balance, everything will just work slower. It will not be as well flowing. It will not be as focused. Just like when you have a headache, you can't think, and you're going to be slower, and you're going to be want to sit down, and you're not going to be creative, right? Well, our cells are very similar to that. But if we can balance the sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous systems, we can help to detoxify. We can, and by detoxifying, we can help the assimilation of your foods. And if you need to supplement, by all means, go do that. I believe in Hippocrates' statement, let food be thy medicine and medicine thy food. And then most recently, our company, one of our young nutritionists, he came up with the saying, if Hippocrates was alive today, he would say, let OnDemand be thy medicine and medicine thy OnDemand.
Very well said. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, and
I'm not done yet, but so when so now I'm detox. I can bring the vitamin C, vitamin D3, curcuma, whatever it is, into the cells, and magnesium. And now I'm finding those spots where it's inflammation. I'm holding applicators in that spots, and I bring the immune cells like a magnet does to the pins, so that they get active in those areas to reduce the inflammation, infectious processes. And you know, the comorbidity that we're dealing with COVID-19, you're not dying of COVID-19, okay? Let me correct that thinking in your head. You are dying of comorbidities, as people have always died with every flu season. February and November is nothing new. It's been happening, and as a statistician, I would say to you, when we take COVID-19 numbers today, and we're looking at these numbers, we are not comparing it to anything that we've ever done before. Have we ever taken all the statistics of how many people died or how many people were infected of a flu infection? No, we've never done that before. Then where the heck are these numbers coming from? Where is your fear coming from? Stop it. Replace fear with love.
absolutely. Brilliant suggestion. Very, very nice takeaway from this meeting. And I'm looking forward to welcoming you back to India. And we need to take this technology to the people, and we need to take it to 1 billion people here that need this so badly, and to do the raising their immune systems to a level where they can teach their bodies to self-regulate and to become strong and resilient. Thank you very much, Dr. Sylvia, for your time. Really appreciate. Look forward to seeing you very soon once this madness is over.
Namaste. Thank you so much. Be well. And it was a pleasure to be with you. Nice to see you again. And I hope to see you very soon in New Delhi. Be well, everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.